Sada. Joining us virtually is the Chief Executive Officer of the National Space Science Agency, Dr. Mohammed Asiri, and a very special guest from Kuwait. He is the founding partner and general manager of the very first company in the Arab world to provide access to space, Dr. Bassam El-Fili. Dr. El-Fili, Mr. Samir Nas, Dr. Abdullah Sada, Dr. Mohammed Asiri, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. I'm very honored to be with you, and I thank you for joining us once again and taking the time today. My name is Aisha, and I'm a member of the media team of the Bahrain Chamber, and I'll be moderating today's session. Now, allow me to highlight a few things before we kickstart. This session is live on Zoom application with live interpretation to Arabic. So if you wish to hear this in Arabic, click on the interpretation button. This session is also live on the Chamber's YouTube channel. As for today's agenda, we will kickstart with a word from the chairman of Bahrain Chamber, Mr. Samir Nas, followed by a presentation by Dr. Bassam El-Fili. Dr. Bassam will share the successful story of his company, Orbital Space, and reflections from his experience. At the end, there will be time for your questions and comments. I kindly advise you to make your questions precise and relevant, and to introduce yourself and the company that you represent. You can type the questions in the chat box, or you can click on the raise hand button to address them directly to our speaker. Now, without further ado, I leave you with a word from Mr. Samir Nas.
صبحكم الله بالخير يا اخوان، واهلا وسهلا فيكم في غرفة البحرين بيت التجار. الاخ بسام حياك الله وصبحك الله بالخير. اخ محمد حياكم الله. I'd like to extend on behalf of the board of directors of Bahrain Chambers and its members greetings, all the greetings from here, and it's my pleasure to be participating with you in this session to discuss the opportunities available in space sciences. And I would like to extend warmest greetings to His Excellency Engineer Kamal Ahmed, Minister of Transport and Telecommunication and Chairman of the National Space Agency, NSSA, and all the members of NSSA. The Space Science Initiative is in line with the Bahrain 2030 vision to develop the sector to a further scientific technological advancement in the kingdom. Would like to express our gratitude to NSSA for their efforts to enhance the space science field in Bahrain, which will propel innovation and economic developments, advancements. This kind of advancement is not only the responsibility of the government, but we feel it's the responsibility of the private sector, which should undertake in line with the rest of the world on a global scale, where private sector are excelling globally and pursuing the opportunities available for them in space science and technology. Some of the largest companies worldwide in the field, including SpaceX, valued at around $74 billion, and Blue Origins, which has been spending $1 billion per year since 2016. The market cap of Virgin Galactic is just under $4 billion US. I would like to emphasize that startups can also enter the space science field with a mere investment of a minimum of $1 million. which is, I think, it's a good opportunities for smaller companies to participate in those opportunities. I don't think it is also monopolized by large companies with this kind of other. And I think Mr. Afifi can give us highlight on this, on how we can introduce this to the private sector. Bahrain Chamber of Commerce looks forward in playing a vital and prominent role to introduce to the private sector this potential of investment opportunities in this kind of industry. I would like to also enhance that the space science in the kingdom contributes to the achievements and vision and wishes of His Majesty's King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, as well as the government's plan to advance in this fourth industrial revolution. Space science involves the integration of emerging technologies and allows the kingdom to excel in technologies and pace with the developed nations across the globe. Global governments' space budgets grew 10% in 2020 compared to 2019, according to Euroconsult's government space program report. The coronavirus pandemic had little effect on government space budget spending, which reached $82.5 billion in 2020. GCC countries are investing greatly in space sciences. The UAE established a national space agency in 2014, and in July 2020, they launched the Emirates Mars mission, and by 2024, the UAE will launch the first ever mission of an Arab country to the moon. Saudi Arabia formed a space commission in 2018 and announced a $2.1 billion investment in the space program as part of the country's 2030 vision. We're proud to highlight that NSSA and Bahrain signed an MOU with Russian State Space Corporation to enhance cooperation in the field of exploration and use of outer space for peaceful purposes. It is crucial that we encourage the youth and societies in general to take full advantage of the new space industry in Bahrain. This includes getting involved in projects that will put our nation on the map internationally and will allow us to meet our wise leadership 2030 vision. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to emphasize that Bahrain Chamber commends NSSA for efforts in enhancing innovation in the space science field, and we look forward to supporting the private sector in the new and exciting industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nas, for your warm address. And I couldn't agree more with you on the efforts exerted by our leadership and the futuristic vision, focusing on empowering the youth and fostering a culture of entrepreneurship and innovation, and the immense opportunities in this new field and the need to explore and invest in this promising field. I thank you once again, Mr. Samir Nas. And now I leave the floor to Dr. Bassam El-Fili. Please go ahead, Dr. Bassam.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صبح على جميع المشاركين بالخير ورحب فيكم اليوم في هذا اللقاء واتمنى انه يكون اللقاء هذا عند حسن ظنكم. طبعا بالبدايه راح شويه اتكلم بالعربي وبعدين I will switch to English. اولا احب اشكر جميع منتسبين الهيئه الوطنيه لعلوم الفضاء وطبعا على راسهم سعادة الدكتور محمد العسيري الرئيس التنفيذي للهيئة على تشجيعهم المستمر ودعمهم المعنوي للمبادرات والأنشطة المعنية بنشر الوعي وتثقيف الجمهور بمجال الفضاء وتطبيقاته، وحتى تشجيع الشباب على الدخول فيه وتحقيق الإنجازات سواء في البحرين أو حتى على مستوى منطقة الخليج العربي. ويعني أكبر دليل طبعا تنظيم اللقاء هذا اليوم بالتعاون مع غرفة تجارة وصناعة البحرين، وأنا طبعا أتشرف بأن يكون اللقاء هذا تحت رعاية سعادة الأستاذ سمير ناس، وهذه طبعا إشارة واضحة على الحرص في تأسيس قطاع فضاء وطني مستدام من خلال السعي في بناء القدرات وتمهيد الطريق للمبادرين ورائد الأعمال للدخول في هذا المجال الشيق. طبعا لا أخفى عليكم أن ما تفضل سعادة السيد سمير أن القطاع الخاص يلعب دور مهم في تطوير المجالات الاقتصادية الجديدة مثل مجال الفضاء، وهذا طبعا له انعكاسات إيجابية على دعم عجلة الاقتصاد الوطني وخلق قطاع فضائي متميز. If you allow me now, I will share my screen. Welcome everybody. I hope you can see my screen. Okay, I assume it is. So in today's session, we will be discussing opportunities in the space sector. The agenda for today's session, I will start by giving an overview of the space sector, just to get everybody on the same page when we're discussing the different terms of the space sector. Also discuss the global trends and opportunities, then focus more on the regional trends and opportunities, talk about the story of Orbital Space, and then discuss the challenges and opportunities, especially for entrepreneurs, based on my own experience and the lessons learned throughout the years. So if we look historically, back in the 60s, space or access to space was very limited. The capability to launch space rockets was limited to only 3 countries. And it was only 6 countries that owned satellites. Moving forward, and even this is actually an outdated information, this is 2016 diagram, you can see how the number of countries that are involved in space increased significantly. And it continues to increase in that, whether in launch capabilities. As you can see, the number have jumped significantly. It's more than doubled. And also the number of countries that own or operate satellites have increased significantly. Now, sorry, I missed one slide. Yeah. So now, if you want to look at the landscape of the space sector, it's actually very diverse. I will draw your attention first to the circles. If we look at the ground equipment circle, and this is where things starts from the ground when it comes to equipment used for ground stations to receive signals from space, or to control spacecrafts and satellites in space. Then moving counterclockwise to the next circle, which is satellite services. And this is also one of the main things that many people are talking about, and it's becoming the focus of the space sector, is what kind of services that we can provide to people on Earth. So many people think of space as something looking out into deeper space, which is true, but actually the focus is mostly looking down to Earth and providing services to people living on Earth and improving the quality of life of humans on Earth. Moving forward, as far as importance and priorities, of course, national security is very important topic when it comes to space, and it has a big influence on how space has been developing over the years. Moving to the next circle, which is satellite manufacturing. Also, this is a major segment of the space sector, and it's developing based on the demand and how the sector itself is evolving and developing over the years. And we will speak later on how now satellites are being miniaturized and getting smaller and more efficient, and actually having long life cycles compared to earlier generations of satellites. Then moving to the more of the launch industry, which is getting to space itself, is a major segment of the space sector. And this is actually what gives us the capability to launch and put spacecrafts and satellite in orbit around Earth, and also send spacecraft into other planets and deep space missions. Of course, within that, also now we're seeing things are developing into things like space tourism and even accommodations. People are now thinking about building hotels on orbit around Earth. Also talking about human missions to the moon, which is coming up very soon in 2024. The US will return to the moon with 2 astronauts, actually 1 male and 1 female, to the moon. And also now people are talking about sending humans to Mars. And this is even actually part of the UAE national strategy, that by 2117, so about 100 years from now, they would have Emiratis on Mars. So these are more of the long-term plans, but this is just to show you, the different segments of this space and how it interacts with each other, how things related to, B2B, business to business. There's also B2G, and even B2C when it comes to the different business models. Now, also to get you more familiar with the terms in the space sector, there is the upstream. This is mainly related to operations that get us to outer space, whether launch systems and vehicles, the satellites and spacecrafts itself, how to keep them in space and have them in full operation out there, which is in a very harsh environment and very challenging to keep them there. And also providing services when it comes to ground segments and networks to operate and control these satellites and ground and spacecrafts. Now, when we look into downstream, this is where we look into more of the applications and the use of data that's provided by the satellites and other spacecrafts, whether it's broadcasting, internet, navigation, and value-added services. Also, this includes equipment that's being used or provided by the users to access data or signals being transmitted by satellites. Now we have also end users. This is the more of the consumer side of this industry, and it's mostly the demand coming from government, also academia, and also businesses when it comes to the different services and sectors utilizing and benefiting from space technologies, whether in the energy sector, infrastructure, agriculture, marine, defense, security, and so on. Now, what I want to draw your attention here from this slide, that the different segments of the space sector have different maturity levels. So they're not all at the same level of maturity. You can see number 1 to 5. They're already well established, considered mature areas. Whereas, for example, 6 has been implemented, but it's getting there to the let's say maturity level. Now, number 7, which includes space tourism, this is already started, and we're hoping that in the coming years it will become more mature. Now, the emerging side of things is mostly related to generating energy from space or mining resources from outer space. So bringing resources such as precious metals and materials back to Earth and utilize them, whether from asteroids or from other planets or moons. Here in this slide, I wanted to bring in your attention to a new term that been introduced in the in the previous years, which is a new space. This term, I'm sure you're going to hear it a lot in the coming days, and this month we have a lot of space conferences and events, and you're going to hear a new space term a lot. So what does that mean, and why this term was coined? So basically, historically, back in the 50s and 60s, satellite or space technologies in general have pushed or drive the development and growth of information and communication technologies, ICTs. So without space technologies, the development of that sector, ICT sector, would have been very slow. Now, in the recent years, we're seeing the opposite effect, where ICT sector is actually driving space sector, and this is because ICT now have a very strong appetite for gathering more information and more data, access into a wider scope when it comes to areas. So not limited to small area, but more of a global areas for data collections and data distribution. And also speed. Speed is also very important. There's the ICT sector is very hungry for speed when it comes to transferring data from one place to another, especially in long distances. So this is where you will see now, when we talk about new space, we're talking about how we can use ICT technologies within the space sector to provide new services and new technologies that could benefit people on Earth. So this is basically what we mean by new space. Now, what are the opportunities in new space? There are actually plenty. There is the institutional customers, which we mean here by more of the government side or the academia side. There is always demand for security and surveillance. Also now space agencies are being pressured to lower their costs, and they have to find new ways to achieve their goals and objectives. And this is where with new space, since things are getting cheaper and faster, this is also an important part of opportunities there. Also demand for satellites, as the number of countries are growing in having their own satellites. There's always that opportunity to come up with cheaper, more efficient, and long life satellites for the new applications. When we look at the private side, of course, I wouldn't say the sky is the limit. It's even beyond the sky. There's so many opportunities when we talk about big data. When we talk about data networks and broadband, Internet of Things, autonomous systems. It's becoming a very hot field, especially now with drones technologies, and how can we navigate and find short distance, the shortest distance between 2 points for moving drones from one place to another, especially if we're now talking about how we can utilize drones for delivery of goods and services. Of course, when telecommunication is the largest segment of the space or the satellite sector. So when we talk about video content, streaming, internet, broadcasting, especially worldwide, to rural areas and all that, and of course, with the digitalization in businesses, you're going to rely a lot more on data and transferring data from one point to another in a very secure way. So these are very important opportunities, especially for entrepreneurs and startups to develop some of these new technologies and introduce them to the market for the larger companies. Now, I also want to, I don't want to scare you with this slide. It's very busy, but my point here is that with new space opportunities is not that simple. It's not as simple as it sounds. There are many factors that influence these new opportunities, whether it's related to financing, legal and regulatory factors that can affect or impact these new opportunities that we can look into. Also, the business philosophy, how we think, what's the mindset of managing the business actually really impacts these opportunities and how they evolve and develop. The space sector is considered very risky. The risks are very high, so you need somebody very brave with a strong will to take high risks for high gains. And also technology management is also a very important factor when it comes into looking into strategically what should we focus on based on supply and demand. Now, looking now down into the more focus to our region, as Mr. Samir mentioned, that Saudi Arabia, UAE have announced large investments in the space sector, and this is part of their national vision and strategic directions. You see also and around the region, many countries have already established whether space program or space agencies, or at least put building space capabilities as part of their strategic national plans. Now, of course, when they put building capabilities, that also means focusing on the youth and the next generation. And if we look at the GCC in general, the number of students as a total is about 8.8 million students. Most of them are in the public schools, but we also have a good number in the private education, and this is a great opportunity also for entrepreneurs in the region to look into how can you cater to this demand, because now the countries have their plans and goals to develop their local capabilities and their human capital in this area. And there's a large number of students, but then how can we do this? How can we provide services that meet the demand of these plans? And this is where Orbital Space came about. Actually, we recognize that there's a gap where the countries, as I mentioned, they have plans to develop their capabilities, but there is nobody providing activities and programs that could help develop the next generation in these countries. Yes, okay, maybe the university started to initiate some programs, but again, because this is something new to them, they still need support, and they need somebody to help them and guide them into getting into these new initiatives and new programs for the students to ensure that they're done correctly and they become successful. So this is where we established Orbital Space. Orbital Space now actually based in Dubai. And as far as assets, we actually own a CubeSat. It has been launched last June, and it's already in orbit. And we also have a ground station to command and control and receive signals from this satellite, which is located in Dubai Silicon Oasis. We have completed a few missions. So as a start, we started with an initiative in collaboration with the Scientific Center in Kuwait and Kuwait University, which was an opportunity for all students in Kuwait to come up with ideas for a science experiment to be sent to space as Kuwait's first experiment to space. So we made this as a competition open to all students. And then one team was selected based on the most suitable idea to be taken to space as far as practicality. And then for 1 year, we spent 1 year with them, mentoring them and guiding them, of course, in collaboration with Kuwait University, to help them prepare their experiment in accordance with the guidelines and to meet the some of the criteria that's required to send payload to the International Space Station. So the experiment was launched in December 2020. It went to the International Space Station, where one of the NASA astronauts actually conducted the experiment on behalf of the students in Kuwait. The experiment stayed in the International Space Station for 40 days, and then it was returned back to Earth and was returned back to Kuwait for the students to complete their analysis and complete their experiment. Now, after we completed this mission, we wanted to do something more complicated, so we decided to work on a CubeSat project where we designed and put together a CubeSat that was launched last June, as I mentioned, and this CubeSat was named Qamar al-Kuwait, which means in English Moon of Kuwait. Now, this satellite is basically a platform for initiative also for students, which we called Code in Space. Code Space basically gives an open access to students to engage and interact with a real satellite actually in space, orbiting around Earth, to learn and engage with space technologies. So we felt that, okay, if you teach students about satellite technology by just reading and showing them pictures, yes, they will learn some, but it will not be as exciting as if you give them the opportunity to actually interact directly with a real satellite. So we announced this as an opportunity to students, and actually we have a few groups from Bahrain participated in this initiative, and we're hoping that in the coming months we will start uploading the code from students and execute this code and have the students see directly the result of their projects from space, as the satellite will broadcast the results back to Earth, to the ground station. We also have done many awareness activities to engage students and the youth in space. We feel this is an important part of our activities. And we also collaborated with NSSA in many events and activities. We really enjoy working with them, and we hope to do more in the future. So our philosophy basically is to provide space engagement activities, hands-on activities, competitions, organizing events, to draw the attention and interest of the youth into this sector, and hopefully that they will study these topics and become the future generation of satellite operators in this region. Now, besides providing events and activities, also for the ones who would like to work with real space hardware and have their own satellite projects, we can also provide them with products and services to build their own satellites. So this is, we're hoping that more and more universities in the region will start engaging their students in building CubeSats, which are very small satellites intended for student projects and to engage the students in the satellite industry. So we provide products to build satellites, and also services to help them manage the project and make sure the execution of the project is done the right way to ensure successful missions, and hopefully the results of these projects will have a larger or wider impact on the students and the society. Now, of course, we cannot do this alone. We have established partnerships and relationships with many entities, especially in the region. Mohammed bin Rashid's Space Center and NSSA, also some of the companies in the space sector to support us and help us build activities and grow in this field. And this is very common, and it's something I will also talk about later on, that in the space sector, you have to work with others. It's very difficult to work alone. So now, talking about, this is the last part of my presentation, is talking about the lessons learned and what are the challenges, and how can we overcome these challenges. Now, one thing, it is not the strongest nor the most intelligent that survives. It's actually the one that is most adaptable to change. So this is something that I want to convey, especially to entrepreneurs and business people in this talk, is that that's what's the important. It's not about having the most advanced technology or the largest funding. It's more about how can you adapt and find new ways to meet demands and gaps in the market. Also, another thing is that you would notice, and if you've seen that when if you look into SpaceX or Blue Origin or Virgin Galactic, space entrepreneurs are driven by unconditional passion for space, and they're not afraid to invest initially their own money. And you can see that Elon Musk spent his own money, Jeff Bezos, same thing. They're all initially put their own money because they truly believe in the space sector, and they see the opportunity and believe in it. And this is something that that you should have that mindset to get into this area. Otherwise, if you don't believe in it or you doubt it, don't waste your time. This is it's not an easy sector to work with. But if you're successful, it's very rewarding. Okay, so one of the most important challenge that we face, especially here in our region, in the Middle East region, is that space sector utilizes dual usage technology. These technologies are, can be used for military purposes, and this, imposes political restrictions because it has that side of military usage. There's a lot of restrictions on who can get these technologies, and sometimes the advanced countries who develop these technologies, they'll be very hesitant to share these technologies with other nations if they don't trust them. So to go around this, there's a lot of now commercial launch services. So you don't have to have your own launch capabilities and to build your own rockets. There are now commercial private companies that can provide you with launch services if you wish to launch satellites or spacecrafts. Also, you don't have to develop things from scratch. There is now a lot of off-the-shelf systems and devices that you can buy and integrate and put together to build your own technologies or your own systems. There's, of course, always the case of 3D printing. So, if nobody's willing to provide you with something, then you can make it yourself by 3D printing capabilities. Another way around is also to focus on services based on existing space assets. So you don't have to have your own satellite, or you don't have to own your own assets in space. You can use business models like the Uber business model, where you don't have to. Uber does not manufacture cars. They don't even own cars. So maybe think of ways to work in that arena where you don't have to own the space assets itself, but find some business models that you can utilize these assets to generate revenue and meet some of the demands and gaps in the market. And another example is, and this is maybe in the satellite imaging or Earth observation. Usually, if you want to do Earth observations with high resolution cameras, there's also a lot of restrictions on that, just because of, again, security. People don't like it when you start looking at their countries or within their borders with high resolution. So a workaround is, instead of, if you cannot obtain high resolution camera, you can offer things of more frequent revisits to the same location by using certain orbits and satellites to do that. So there's always innovative or smart ways to go around to come up with new services that, even with the restrictions we have or imposed in this industry, we can always find a way around to provide services of a value to others. Another thing is to focus on enhancing existing space technologies, whether new ways for image processing, utilizing artificial intelligence, big data, robotics, or new sensors that will be offered to manufacturers of satellites and spacecraft. So your startup or your small business can be a supplier to a larger company. So yeah, you because you're developing something small and something simple, the issue of security and political restrictions will not be there. But then you can sell it to larger companies that actually are interested in these technologies and willing to buy these new technologies. Also, you can focus on integration of space technologies with terrestrial solutions. So you can combine both. So finding new ways to, merging the two together and providing value-added services on Earth, whether in the region or globally. And another challenge when it comes to space sector, usually space missions are long-term, they take long time. and also they require large initial capital if you want to own a satellite or spacecraft or even a constellation of satellites. Now, the solution around this is now with miniaturization, as I mentioned earlier, and standardization. Space hardware is getting much cheaper. Also, you don't have to buy things. You can pay per use now. And there's also virtual equipment. So, for example, you don't have to set up your own ground station. Now they have what they call virtual ground stations around the world, and you just get access, or you can get subscription to access these equipments or these devices. So this is, new ways of getting access to space hardwares or working with space missions in short times or short terms. Another challenge with, many people always talk about is that this is a very niche sector and there's not much demand, which is true. So the strategy is to work at global level. So when you're thinking about providing new services, whether it's communications, Earth observations, machine to machine, ITO, don't limit yourself to your countries or within your borders or the region. You have to think globally. You have to think that whatever service you provide, it has to cater to worldwide operations. Also avoid flags because again, political issues, it's better to make your company more of a global company. And when you're offering products or services, not to be associated with a specific flag. It should be more of an international, and this will give you a bigger demand when compare if you're just limiting yourself to one region or one country. Also, another major issue, especially in this region, is shortage of talent. Yes, it's true we don't have a lot of people who are expert in this area, but now we are seeing many university programs being established, especially in the UAE and Saudi Arabia. Also in North Africa, there's actually a good talent there in Egypt, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco. There is talent over there that you can also attract to work in your company if you're looking into working in this sector. Another challenge is that most space activities are related to governmental activities. That's true, but again, we have to be innovative and creative and come up with new ways. So if you're able to find new ways to transition B2G to B2B or from B2B to B2C, then you'll have a lot more chances with success and in activities and projects, because B2B is actually working with another business is much easier than working with government. No offense to NSSA, they are very great, but I'm talking in general that working with government entities are usually very slow, and there's a lot of bureaucracy, which is we understand. This is public money and it needs to be protected. So finding new ways to work with other businesses or even providing services to customers directly will be very, very beneficial. So as an entrepreneur, keep that in mind. Now, another challenge with increased space activities, there's always new challenges awaiting ahead. Think or keep in mind now with increase of space activities that we have lots of countries launching satellites and spacecrafts. We're going to face issue with space traffic. I personally faced an issue actually during the launch of Qamar al-Kuwait. 11 seconds before the launch, so it was just like 1 second before the start of countdown to the launch, an airplane entered the airspace for the rocket launch, and they decided that they had to cancel the launch. Imagine 11 seconds before launch, and they stopped the launch because a commercial airline airplane entered the space designated for the launch of the rocket, and we have to wait for another day. And this cost millions of dollars for SpaceX because they already fueled the rocket and everything was ready to be launched, but then they have to scrap it. There's always that struggle now between both the aviation sector and the space sector on utilizing the space, because to get to space you have to cross airspace, and airspace is being used mostly by aviation sector. So there's always that issue. Even the first flight with Virgin Galactic, there was an issue. They actually, the aviation in the US put a ban on Virgin Galactic for a few months until they fixed the issue, because they also went outside the airspace that was designated for them during the landing of their spaceship. So there's always opportunities to innovate and come up with new solutions, whether related to managing space traffic, also limited geo orbit slots for telecommunication satellites. There's always an issue with limited frequencies available for satellite communications, and also space debris is a major issue. So these are all opportunities that you can look into and maybe come up with new solutions. And if you do, I guarantee you, you're going to be very rich if you can come up with solutions to these issues and challenges, because they are increasingly becoming very important to this sector. So with that, I will conclude my presentation, and back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Bassam, for this eye-opening presentation. I loved it, and the passion that you shared with all of us. Thank you so much. Well, it's very interesting how you shed light on CubeSats, how small they are and how practical, how students can have hands-on experience. That's really interesting. And I believe many of us have seen that as of lately, there were many initiatives by governments, even here in Bahrain, for triggering interest in students and the youth in the space science field. So I thank you once again, Dr. Bassam, and I congratulate you on Qamar al-Kuwait.
Thank you very much.
Now I take this opportunity to thank everyone joining us today, and now the floor is open for your questions. So please press on the raised hand button, or you can type your question in the chat and we'll be handling them for now. So do we have raised hands? Chat. Maybe we have a comment from Dr. Mohammed Al-Asiri. Would you like to say something?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ms. Aisha, for being famous for this event. And thank you for Dr. Bassam for the great speech and for explaining all this information for our respected audience. I have also one question regarding the process which Orbital Space went through in order to register itself as an authorized operating company in Dubai. Maybe we'd like to learn more about this part and whether it was easy or not, and why you didn't decide to establish your company in Kuwait. Maybe this is very beneficial for our audience. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Mohammed. This is a very important question. The reason I did not register in Kuwait because we don't have licenses or the infrastructure for setting up space companies in Kuwait. Whereas in the UAE, they do have that infrastructure and that support because in their national strategy is to develop the private space sector in the UAE. So it was very easy. They already have the different categories for business licenses. Actually, Orbital Space, when I established it in the UAE, I got the license to operate satellites. And also, I have a license also to sell satellite components. So this is something that very easy. All I had to get was approval from the UAE Space Agency on the business plan and the business activity. And then I went to the economic development in Dubai, applied for a license, and it was on the same day I got the license for establishing Orbital Space.
Marvelous. So do we have more comments and questions from our audience? Let me check. Yeah. No questions? All right. Any final comments, Dr. Bassam El-Fili?
So I would like to conclude by saying, especially to the entrepreneurs and the young audience with us here, that you have to be very brave to enter this sector. It's not going to be easy, but if you persist and be patient, I guarantee you that you will make success, and the success will be very rewarding. We are providing also several opportunities, so please reach out to us. We would love to collaborate and work with others because we cannot, as I said, we cannot do this alone. We love to work with others. So if you have ideas or you already have plans to set up your own startup or your business in this area, please feel free to reach out to us. We would love to work with you, support you with whatever we can, because the more we have of these startups, the more we can work together and we can accomplish more together than just having all the few companies. So this is what I would like to conclude with. Thank you, and good luck to everybody.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bassam El-Fili, and I thank everyone who joined us today in this very interesting session on space science. I take this opportunity to also thank Dr. Mohammed Al-Asiri, the Chief Executive Officer of the National Space Science Agency. On behalf of the Bahrain Chamber of Commerce and Industry, I thank you once again for joining us. And let me remind you that you can go back to our YouTube channel to watch this session. And until then, I hope to see you in future.